The auction hammer came down with a sound that echoed through the Ikoyi mansion like a death sentence. Sold to bidder number 47 for 12 million naira. Everything was gone. The Louis Vuitton furniture, the crystal chandeliers from Italy, the gold-plated dining set that had hosted presidents and oil tycoons. But it was the sight of his late mother's portrait being carried out by strangers that made billionaire Chukwuemeka Obi's carefully constructed facade nearly crack. Only one person in that crowd of vultures and spectators was crying. Not his business partners who disappeared overnight, not his so-called friends who now avoided his calls. Just her, Ngozi, his housemaid of 7 years, weeping silently in the corner as if her own world was ending. And Chukwuemeka was watching, because none of this was real. Before I continue, if you're ready for a story about loyalty, betrayal, and a twist that'll leave your jaw on the floor, hit that like button right now. Subscribe and comment the country you are watching from. 3 weeks earlier, Chukwuemeka had sat in his study overlooking the Lagos skyline, the city lights glittering like the diamonds in his Rolex. He was 42 years old, self-made, with a tech empire worth over 2 billion naira. Orphaned at 15, he'd built everything from nothing, coding in cyber cafes, sleeping in his office, sacrificing friendships and relationships for success. His mansion employed 12 staff members, but only one had been there since the beginning. Ngozi, a village girl from Enugu who'd come to Lagos with nothing but a primary school certificate and a desperate need to feed her 4 younger siblings after their parents died in a car accident. He'd hired her 7 years ago when she'd shown up at his gate, skinny and scared, begging not for money, but for work. "Sir, I can clean, I can cook, I will work hard. Please, my brothers and sisters are hungry." Something in her eyes, that same desperate hunger he'd once felt, made him say yes. Over the years, she'd become invisible furniture in his life, present but unnoticed, serving his meals, cleaning his home, existing in the background while he built his empire higher and higher. But 2 months ago, everything changed when his business partner, Chief Adeyemi, pulled him aside at an industry event. "Chukwuemeka, my boy, you're making the same mistake I once made." Chief Adeyemi was 70, wealthy beyond measure, but his eyes carried a sadness that money couldn't erase. "You think everyone around you is loyal because you pay them well, but loyalty bought with money disappears the moment the money does." "I choose my people carefully, Chief." "Do you?" The old man's smile was bitter. "I had a wife of 30 years, business partners I called brothers, children I gave everything to. When I lost everything in 2008, just for 6 months, just a cash flow problem, my wife filed for divorce within weeks. My partners sued me. My own children, they looked at me like I was a stranger. The only person who stayed, who brought me food when I was hiding from creditors, was my driver, a man I'd barely noticed for 15 years. Chukwuemeka had laughed it off that night. His people were different. His household staff respected him. His business associates valued their relationship. But the conversation haunted him. Late at night, alone in his mansion, he'd started noticing things. How the gardener's smile never reached his eyes. How the chef always had his phone out, possibly taking pictures of the luxury to show off. How his personal assistant's loyalty seemed to extend exactly as far as her generous salary. Then came the breaking point, a moment so small yet so revealing. He'd been working late in his study when he overheard 2 of his housekeepers talking in the hallway. You see this Oga's latest car? 300 million naira, and he's giving us how much for Christmas bonus? 100,000? Stingy man. I beg, forget. The day this man falls, I will celebrate. We're the ones doing the work while he's just pressing laptop and calling it business." They laughed and walked away, not knowing their Oga had heard every word. That night, Chukwuemeka made a decision that would change everything. He called his lawyer, his accountant, and his most trusted friend, the only 3 people who would know the truth. Within 2 weeks, they'd crafted the perfect plan. To the world, Chukwuemeka Obi's tech empire would collapse spectacularly. A fake FBI investigation into money laundering, frozen accounts, bankruptcy proceedings. He would lose everything, or rather appear to lose everything. And in the process, he would discover who among his staff, his friends, his associates, actually cared about him and not just his money. The first blow came on a Monday morning. He'd gathered his household staff in the living room, his face deliberately haggard after 2 days of not shaving or sleeping properly. "There's been a mistake with my international accounts, a serious mistake. The authorities think I've been involved in something illegal. Everything's frozen. The company, the accounts, everything." His voice cracked perfectly. "I'm going to lose it all. And I can't pay your salaries this month. Maybe not for several months." The reactions were immediate and telling. His personal assistant's face had gone pale, and by afternoon she'd sent her resignation letter via email, too cowardly to deliver it in person. The gardener and 3 other staff members simply didn't show up for work the next day. Within a week, 9 of his 12 employees had abandoned ship, but 3 remained. His elderly driver, Musa, who'd been with him for 5 years, his gate man, Ifenyi, who had nowhere else to go, and Ngozi, especially Ngozi. On the 8th day of his bankruptcy, Chukwuemeka had been sitting in his study, now noticeably emptier as he'd started selling furniture to maintain the illusion, when Ngozi knocked softly. "Sir, I made jollof rice. It's not much, but—" She placed a plate before him, and he noticed her hands were rougher than usual, the nails broken. "Ngozi, you haven't been paid in 2 weeks. Why are you still here?" She'd looked at him with those same desperate eyes from 7 years ago. But now they held something else, something he couldn't quite name. "Sir, 7 years ago you gave me a chance when everyone else saw a village girl with nothing. You paid for my siblings' school fees when you didn't have to. You gave me dignity." Her voice was soft but steady. "Money finishes, gratitude doesn't. I will stay until you tell me to go." Now, watching her cry as strangers carted away his possessions, Chukwuemeka felt something twist in his chest. In a room full of over 100 people, journalists, bargain hunters, curious onlookers, only his maid wept for him. But the test wasn't over, not even close, because what Ngozi would do in the next 24 hours would either restore his faith in humanity or destroy it forever. And what he didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Ngozi had a secret of her own, one that would change everything he thought he understood about loyalty, sacrifice, and the true price of redemption. At 11:47 p.m., 3 days after the auction, Chukwuemeka stood in the darkness of what used to be his master bedroom, now empty except for a single mattress on the floor, and watched through the window as Ngozi hurried out of the servants' quarters with a small bag clutched to her chest. She looked left, then right, then disappeared into the Lagos night like she was running from something, or toward something. He'd installed cameras everywhere as part of his test. Now, watching her on his phone screen as she flagged down an Akata at the gate, one question burned through his mind. Was she finally leaving like the others? Or was this something else entirely? What she did next would haunt him for the rest of his life. The past 72 hours had been brutal, not because of the fake bankruptcy, but because of what Chukwuemeka was learning about human nature. His business partners had released statements distancing themselves from him. We had no knowledge of Mr. Obi's alleged financial improprieties. Friends he'd vacationed with in Dubai now claimed they barely knew him. His ex-girlfriend sold a story to a tabloid. He was always suspicious. I saw the signs. The mansion felt like a mausoleum. Most rooms were now empty, the echo of his footsteps a constant reminder of his supposed fall. He'd moved to the smallest bedroom, maintaining the appearance of a man clinging to his last possession. The luxury cars were gone, repossessed by the bank. The swimming pool sat empty, filled with leaves. Even the flowers in the garden were dying from neglect. But through it all, 3 people remained. Musa, the driver, who now walked to the house each day since there were no cars left to drive. Ifeanyi, the gateman, who'd started a small garden by the gate to grow vegetables for when things get better, Oga. And Ngozi, who'd somehow become more present, more visible as everything else disappeared. What Chukwuemeka hadn't anticipated was how painful it would be to watch Ngozi suffer because of his lie. On the second day after the auction, he'd noticed she was eating only once a day, always insisting she'd eaten earlier when she served him meals that clearly came from her own portion. Her uniform, usually crisp and clean, had started showing signs of wear. She was washing it by hand now to save on the laundry money she used to receive. But it was the phone call he'd accidentally overheard on the fourth day that nearly broke him. He'd been in the hallway when he heard her voice from the kitchen, speaking Igbo into her old Nokia phone. "Adaeze, ne, I know your school fees is due next week. Please, please beg your principal for 2 more weeks. I will send it, I promise. No, no, don't cry, my sister. You will finish school. You will become that nurse you want to be. Yes, I'm fine. Oga is feeding me well. Don't worry about me." Through the kitchen door crack, he'd seen her wipe tears from her eyes before returning to scrubbing the floor, a floor in a mansion that was supposedly being foreclosed on for a man who supposedly couldn't pay her. That evening, he'd found her in the servants' quarters counting money. 20,000 naira, likely everything she had left. She'd arranged the worn bills in neat piles, her lips moving as she calculated, her eyes wet with quiet desperation. The next morning, Chukwuemeka had decided to push the test further. He'd called Ngozi to the study, his face deliberately grave. "Ngozi, I need to tell you something. The bank is foreclosing on the house next week. I have to leave Lagos. Go back to my village, stay with my uncle's family until I figure things out. I've packed the bags." He paused, watching her face. "I can't take the remaining staff with me. I can't pay anyone. You need to find another job. I'm sorry." He'd expected tears, maybe anger, perhaps relief that she was finally free to leave. Instead, Ngozi had been silent for a long moment, staring at her worn canvas shoes. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red-rimmed but determined. "Sir, your village in Anambra. You will need someone to cook, to clean. I can come. You don't have to pay me. Just food and a place to sleep. That is enough." "Ngozi, don't be foolish. You have siblings depending on you. How will you send them money if—" "Ngozi will understand, sir." Her voice was firmer now, almost fierce. "When you helped me, you saved 5 lives, not 1. You paid for Chidi's surgery when he had appendicitis. You sent Adaeze to nursing school. You gave Obina money to start his phone repair business. You gave Amaka her first job in your company's mailroom." She stepped closer, her small frame somehow commanding. "A good person falls, sir. They don't become a bad person. I will not abandon you the way others have. That is not who my parents raised me to be." Chukwuemeka had turned away, supposedly to compose himself, actually to hide the genuine emotion threatening to crack his facade. This village girl with nothing was offering him everything she had. "Go, Ngozi, think about it. Decide by tomorrow." She'd nodded and left, and he genuinely believed she would take the night to reconsider, to choose survival over loyalty. He was wrong. Now, at 11:47 p.m., he watched her on the camera feed, riding on the back of an Okada through dangerous Lagos streets. The motorcycle stopped at what looked like a hospital, Isolo General Hospital, according to the GPS tracker he'd discreetly placed in the servants' quarters, a paranoid precaution that now felt invasive and shameful. She got off, paid the driver from her small bag, and hurried inside. Chukwuemeka's heart raced. Was she sick? Had his test pushed her to some kind of breakdown? He grabbed his car keys, one of the vehicles he'd secretly kept in his lawyer's garage, and drove across Lagos, arriving at the hospital 20 minutes later. What he saw through the emergency room window stopped him cold. Ngozi sat in the donation room, Her thin arm extended as a nurse inserted a needle. She was selling her blood for money. But it was what happened next that destroyed him. After the donation, she'd collected her payment, 8,000 naira, and walked directly to the billing office. Through the window, he watched her speak with a tired-looking clerk, counting out money. Her 20,000 naira savings, plus the 8,000 she'd just earned from her blood. The clerk processed the payment and stamped a receipt. Ngozi clutched it to her chest like it was gold, tears streaming down her face. She'd just paid her last family debt with her last money and her own blood. Then she took out her phone and made a call. Chukwuemeka couldn't hear the words, but he could see her smiling through tears, speaking rapidly in Igbo. When she hung up, she sat on the hospital bench and allowed herself exactly 2 minutes to cry. He watched her time it on her phone. 2 minutes to feel everything. Then she wiped her face, straightened her worn uniform, and stood up. Chukwuemeka followed her outside, staying hidden. She walked to the main road, but instead of hailing an Okada home, she walked for kilometers because she'd spent her last transportation money and wouldn't spend the hospital blood money. That was for her family. He drove slowly behind her, this broken girl walking through dangerous Lego streets at 1 a.m., and felt something inside him crack. This wasn't loyalty. This wasn't even gratitude. This was something deeper, something he'd never encountered in his 42 years of life. This was love. Pure, unconditional love, the kind that gives everything and asks for nothing. And she was walking back to serve a man she believed was bankrupt, walking through the dangerous night to return to a master who supposedly couldn't pay her, who just told her to leave, who by any logical measure had nothing left to offer her. When she finally reached the gate at 2:17 a.m., Ifeanyi opened it with worry written all over his face. "Auntie Ngozi, where you go this night? Ogade look for you." "I went to finish something. I'll go check on Oga now." Chukwuemeka was back in his room when she knocked softly. "Sir, I heard you were looking for me. I'm sorry I left without permission. It won't happen again." He couldn't look at her. "Where did you go?" "Personal matter, sir. It's finished now." She paused. "Sir, I've thought about your village. I will come with you. Tomorrow I will pack my things." "Ngozi?" His voice cracked. "You gave me your answer, but I need to know. Why? Why would you throw away your life for a man who's lost everything? A man who can't give you anything?" The silence stretched between them. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but unshakable. "Sir, when I came to Lagos 7 years ago, I wanted to kill myself. I had 4 hungry children depending on me, no education, no hope. I was standing on 3rd Mainland Bridge, looking at the water, thinking my death would be one less mouth to feed." She looked directly at him now, and her eyes held a weight that made him want to weep. "You didn't just give me a job that day, sir. You gave me a reason to live. You saw a human being when everyone else saw a burden. That is worth more than all the money in the world. So if I have to walk through fire to stand beside you now, I will, because some debts can never be repaid with money." After she left, Chukwuemeka sat in the darkness of his empty room and did something he hadn't done since his mother died. He cried. Not fake tears for a fake bankruptcy, but real tears for a real revelation. He'd set out to test who was loyal to his money versus loyal to him, but Ngozi had revealed something far more profound. She was loyal to the person he'd forgotten he was. The 15-year-old orphan who'd once been desperate and alone. The young man who'd understood what it meant to have nothing and be seen as nothing. Somewhere in his climb to billions, he'd lost that person, but Ngozi remembered him, and she was willing to sacrifice everything for a man who no longer existed, except in her memory. But as Chukwuemeka sat there in his grief and revelation, he didn't notice the small detail that would change everything. In the morning, when Ngozi went to pack her belongings, she would discover that someone had been in her room. Her small box of personal items had been opened, and inside, There was something that would force Chukwuemeka to ask a question that terrified him. Who was Ngozi really, and what had she been hiding for 7 years? Musa had been standing outside the kitchen window for 17 minutes, his weathered hands gripping the garden rake so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He'd heard everything: the letters, the confessions, the fake bankruptcy, the tests. And now, as he watched his Oga and Ngozi sit on that kitchen floor like broken children finding each other, he faced a choice that would define the rest of his life. He could walk away and pretend he'd heard nothing, or he could use this information the way Lagos had taught him to survive, by taking what you can, when you can, because mercy is a luxury only the rich can afford. After all, he had his own secrets, and they were about to collide with everyone else's in the most devastating way possible. Musa Audu was 63 years old. The life had weathered him to look closer to 75. He'd been driving for rich men in Lagos for 40 years, watching them from the rearview mirror, invisible and ignored, privy to their phone calls, their affairs, their schemes, but never truly seen as human. 5 years ago, Chukwuemeka had hired him after his previous driver was caught stealing. "You seem honest," Oga had said during the interview. "I like honest people." What Chukwuemeka didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Musa wasn't honest at all. He was just better at hiding his sins. For 5 years, Musa had driven Chukwuemeka to meetings, waited in parking lots, listened to confidential calls through the car's intercom system that Oga thought was turned off. He'd learned about business deals, bank accounts, offshore investments, information that could be worth millions to the right buyer. But Musa had never acted on any of it, not because he was moral, but because he was waiting for the perfect moment when the risk was worth the reward, when Oga was vulnerable enough that he couldn't fight back. And now, standing outside that kitchen window, Musa realized that moment had arrived. But there was something else, something that made this moment even more complicated. 3 months ago, Musa's grandson Ibrahim had been diagnosed with leukemia. The child was 7 years old, the same age Musa's own son had been when he died in a motorcycle accident 20 years ago. Ibrahim was all Musa had left of his bloodline, and the boy was dying. The treatment would cost 8 million naira. Musa had maybe 200,000 saved. He'd gone to loan sharks who'd laughed at him. He'd begged family members who'd turned away. He'd even considered selling his kidney on the black market, but at 63, nobody wanted his organs. He'd been 3 days away from doing something desperate, something that would either save Ibrahim or land Musa in prison, when Chukwuemeka announced his bankruptcy. Musa had known immediately it was fake. He'd been around rich people too long to miss the signs. The way Oga's lawyer kept visiting at odd hours, the phone calls that stopped abruptly when Musa entered the room, the fact that the FBI investigation hit every news station within hours. Too coordinated, too perfect. But Musa had stayed silent, stayed loyal, because despite everything, despite his own desperation, some part of him still hoped that if he proved himself during this test, Oga would reward him, would see him, would finally notice that his driver had been suffering quietly for 3 months while ferrying him in cars that cost more than Ibrahim's life. That hope died yesterday when Musa finally gathered the courage to ask for help. He'd approached Chukwuemeka in the study, hat in hand, voice shaking. "Oga, please, I need to talk to you about my grandson. He's very sick, and the hospital—" "Musa, not now." Chukwuemeka hadn't even looked up from the papers he was pretending to review. "I'm dealing with bankruptcy. I don't have money for charity cases." "But Oga, he's dying. The boy is 7 years old, and if he doesn't get treatment—" "I said, not now," Chukwuemeka had snapped, his voice sharp with the manufactured stress of his fake crisis. "Do you think you're the only one suffering? Do you think you have only problems? I'm losing everything, and you're bothering me about—" He stopped mid-sentence, as if realizing his anger had gone too far. But the damage was done. "I'm sorry, Musa. I can't help right now. Maybe in a few months when things settle." "In a few months, sir, my grandson will be dead." The silence that followed was the kind that breaks something permanently. "I'm sorry," Chukwuemeka had said quietly. "I truly am, but I can't." Musa left that study with something cold and hard forming in his chest. A man who could afford to fake bankruptcy had money. A man who'd been testing his staff instead of trusting them, was exactly as cruel as every other rich man Musa had served. And now, standing outside that kitchen window, listening to Chukwuemeka confess it was all a game while a child was dying in a hospital bed, Musa felt that coldness crystallize into something sharp, something that could cut. Musa pulled out his phone, not the old Nokia he showed everyone, but the smartphone he kept hidden, the one with recordings of confidential conversations, photos of documents left carelessly on the car seat, evidence of every shady business deal he'd witnessed in 5 years. He'd been collecting this information like insurance, never planning to use it unless absolutely necessary. But necessity had arrived. He could go to Chukwuemeka's business rivals. The information he had was worth at least 10 million naira, enough to save Ibrahim and set up his daughter for life. By tomorrow, he could have the money. By next week, Ibrahim could have treatment. All it would cost was betraying a man who'd just revealed himself to be exactly as false as Musa had suspected. His finger hovered over the contact labeled Chief Adeyemi, competitor. One call, one meeting, one transaction, and Ibrahim lives. "Musa, what are you doing?" He spun around to find Ifeanyi standing there, the gateman's face creased with concern. In his hand was a basket of the vegetables he'd been growing by the gate. Tomatoes, peppers, onions. "Nothing, just checking messages." "Musa, my brother, I saw your face. I saw you listening at the window." Ifeanyi stepped closer, his voice low. "Whatever you're thinking of doing, please think carefully." "You don't understand." "I understand that your grandson is sick. I know about Ibrahim." Ifeanyi's eyes were sad, but knowing. "You think you're the only one suffering? My wife has been in the hospital for 4 months, kidney failure. The bills are killing me. But I'm not selling Oga secrets." "Your wife is 43. She's had a life. Ibrahim is 7. Musa's voice cracked. "He hasn't even learned to ride a bicycle yet. He asks me every day, 'Grandpa, when will I get better?' What do I tell him, Ifeanyi? That Oga has millions but won't help? That he's playing games while children die?" "I heard what happened in the kitchen," Ifeanyi said quietly. "I heard Ngozi's story. I heard Oga's confession. He's not playing games, Musa. He's learning. Badly, painfully, but learning." "Learning?" Musa's laugh was bitter. "My grandson doesn't have time for Oga to learn. The rich can afford moral lessons. The poor just die waiting for them to finish their education." The kitchen door opened. Ngozi stepped out, her eyes still red from crying, and froze when she saw both men standing there. "How long have you been there?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Long enough," Musa said, his tone harder than he'd ever used with her. "Long enough to hear that everything, the bankruptcy, the suffering, all of it was fake, a test, a game for a bored billionaire." Chukwuemeka appeared behind Ngozi, and when he saw Musa's face, understanding dawned. "You heard everything." "Yes, sir, I heard everything." Musa's hand tightened on his phone. "I heard how you tested us, how you played with our lives like it was a movie, how you stood there and watched us suffer to satisfy your curiosity." "Musa, I know how this looks." "Do you?" Musa stepped forward, years of submission falling away. "Do you know what it looks like when you watch a rich man throw away food while your family starves? When you drive him to 5-star restaurants while your grandson can't afford medicine? When you hear him complain about fake problems while you have real ones?" "Brother Musa, please," Ngozi tried, but Musa cut her off. "Don't, Ngozi. I respect you. I love you like a daughter, but you're defending a man who let you sell your blood for entertainment, who watched you walk through dangerous streets at night and didn't stop you, who could have ended this test at any moment but chose to keep playing." "You're right," Chukwuemeka said quietly. "You're absolutely right, Musa. I failed you. When you came to me about Ibrahim, I should have listened. I should have seen past my test, past my paranoia. I should have—" "Your grandson is sick?" Ngozi's voice cut through. "Musa, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you have your own family to feed, Aunt Ngozi. Because I'm a proud old man who doesn't beg. Because I thought—" His voice broke. "I thought if I proved myself during Oga's crisis, he'd notice me. He'd see that I stayed when others left. He'd reward loyalty." "And I failed you," Chukwuemeka whispered. "Completely." "Yes, sir, you did." But the question now is what I do with what I know. What I do with 5 years of your secrets, your business deals, your vulnerabilities. I could destroy you by sunset, sir. Completely. And I'd be justified after what you've done." The tension was suffocating. Even the morning birds seemed to have stopped singing. "Or," Ifeanyi said suddenly, stepping between them, "we could all stop keeping secrets. All of us. Right now." Everyone turned to look at him. "Musa has secrets. Oga has secrets. Ngozi kept secrets." Ifeanyi looked at each of them. "I have secrets too. We're all human. We're all broken. We're all doing terrible things for what we think are good reasons." He pulled out his own phone and showed them a picture that made everyone freeze. It was Chief Adeyemi, Chukwuemeka's biggest business rival, the old man who'd warned him about loyalty, standing at Ifeanyi's gate, shaking the gateman's hand. The timestamp was from 3 weeks ago, right after the bankruptcy announcement. "He came to me," Ifeanyi said quietly, "offered me 5 million naira for information about Oga's real financial situation. Said he knew the bankruptcy was fake and wanted proof. He knew I'd stayed, knew I was loyal, knew I'd have access." Chukwuemeka's face went pale. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him to leave my gate and never come back." Ifeanyi's voice was steady. "I told him that Oga had given me a job when nobody else would hire an Igbo gateman in a Yoruba neighborhood, that Oga paid for my wife's wedding when he didn't have to, that loyalty can't be bought if it's real." "But your wife," Ngozi whispered, "the medical bills?" "Are crushing me, yes," Ifeanyi smiled sadly. 5 million naira would have saved her, would have given her the surgery she needs, but it would have killed something in me, you understand? It would have killed the part of me that my father taught me to protect, the part that knows the difference between survival and selling your soul." Musa stared at Ifeanyi, and something in his face crumbled. You chose poverty over betrayal?" "I chose who I am over what I need. There's a difference." Ifeanyi looked at Musa with compassion, not judgment. "And I'm not telling you this to shame you, my brother. I'm telling you because I want you to understand something. If you sell Oga's secrets, you'll save Ibrahim's life. That's true. But you'll also teach Ibrahim that survival matters more than integrity. And one day, when he's grown and faced with the same choice, he'll remember what his grandfather chose." "That's not fair," Musa whispered, tears streaming down his weathered face. "That's not fair. You're asking me to let my grandson die for a principle, for a moral lesson. That's easy to say when it's not your child dying." "You're right. It's not fair." Chukwuemeka's voice was thick with emotion. "None of this is fair. And Ifeanyi shouldn't have to be noble. You shouldn't have to choose between your grandson and your integrity. I created this situation. I tested when I should have trusted. I played games when people were dying." He pulled out his own phone and made a call. "Dr. Okoro, it's Chukwuemeka Obi. I need you to do something urgently. There's a boy named Ibrahim Audu at General Hospital, leukemia. I want him transferred to Echo Hospital immediately. Best treatment available. Send all bills to my private account, the real one, not the bankruptcy ones." He paused. "Yes, now, right now. This child has waited long enough." He hung up and looked at Musa. "Your grandson will get treatment, the best doctors, the best care, everything he needs. And Ifeanyi, your wife's surgery is scheduled for next week. I've already made the arrangements." "But sir," Ifeanyi said, confused, "I never told you about—" "I knew. I've always known about both of you." Chukwuemeka's voice cracked. "Musa, I knew about Ibrahim 3 months ago. My secretary told me. I could have helped then, but I was so wrapped up in my paranoia, my need to test everyone, that I told myself I'd help later. And Ifeanyi, I knew Chief Adeyemi approached you. I have security cameras at the gate. I watched you turn him away, and instead of thanking you, instead of helping your wife, I just watched, like you were entertainment." The shame on his face was devastating to witness. "I'm a monster," he whispered. "My mother sent Ngozi to save me from becoming this, and I became it anyway. I tested loyalty instead of earning it. I hoarded help instead of giving it freely. I played God with people's lives and called it wisdom." Musa stood there, his phone still in his hand, Chief Adeyemi's contact still on the screen. He could still make the call, still get the money, still ensure that even if Oga changed his mind, Ibrahim would be taken care of. Or he could do something harder, something his own father had taught him, but that Lagos had beaten out of him. He could choose mercy. Slowly, deliberately, Musa deleted the contact. Then he deleted the recordings. Then he deleted the photos of documents. 5 years of insurance, 5 years of potential wealth, gone in 30 seconds. "Why?" Musa whispered. "I don't deserve that." "No, sir, you don't." Musa's voice was steady now, clear. "But my grandson will wake up tomorrow in a better hospital, with doctors who can save him because of you. And Ifanyi's wife will have her surgery, and Ngozi's son will go to university. You're not a good man, Oga. Not yet, but you're trying to become one. And that's worth more than revenge." He stepped closer, this weathered driver who'd survived 40 years of rich men's cruelty and indifference. "But I need you to understand something, sir. We're not your chess pieces. We're not your test subjects. We're human beings who bleed the same way you do, who love the same way, who suffer the same way. The only difference between us is luck and timing. You were born to parents who could educate you. I was born to parents who couldn't. That doesn't make you better. It makes you luckier." I know that now." "Do you?" Musa challenged. "Or will you forget again when this crisis is over, when you're back to being rich and powerful and surrounded by people who want your money? Will you remember the old driver who deleted everything? Will you remember the gate man who chose poverty? Will you remember the maid who sold her blood?" The question hung in the air like a prophecy. "I'll remember," Chukwuemeka said, and there was steel in his voice now. "I'll remember every day for the rest of my life, and if I forget, I give you permission, all of you, to remind me, painfully, publicly, however it takes." "We'll hold you to that, sir," Ngozi said softly. "I hope you do." Chukwuemeka looked at each of them, his staff who'd become his teachers, his servants who'd become his salvation. "Tomorrow, this test ends. I'll announce that the bankruptcy was a mistake, that the accounts are unfrozen, that everything is fine. The world will go back to normal, but nothing will actually be normal again, will it?" "No, sir," Ifanyi said, "because now you know the truth." "What truth?" "That the people you can buy will always leave when the money runs out, but the people who stay, the ones who stay even when you have nothing, those are the ones worth more than every naira in your accounts." They stood there in the garden, this unlikely family bound by tests and truth, and almost missed the sound, the soft click of a camera shutter from the neighboring property. Ngozi heard it first. What was that? They all turned to see a figure on the roof next door, camera with a long lens pointed directly at them. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then the figure waved, a mocking, knowing wave, and disappeared. "Who was that?" Musa demanded. Chukwuemeka's face had gone white. That was a journalist from Lagos Insider, the tabloid that's been trying to destroy me for years. "How much did they hear?" Ngozi whispered. "Everything," Chukwuemeka said. "They heard everything. The fake bankruptcy, the tests, all of it." He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "By tomorrow morning, this will be front-page news. My business will be destroyed. Not fake destroyed, really destroyed. No one will ever trust me again." "Then let them publish it," Ifanyi said quietly. Everyone stared at him. "Let them tell the truth," the gate man continued.
"Let Lagos know that you tested your staff. Let them know we stayed anyway. Let them know you land. Sometimes the truth is the only thing that sets you free, even when it costs you everything."
"But it won't just cost me," Chukwuemeka said desperately. "It will cost all of you. They'll tear you apart too, make you look foolish for staying, call you naive, your reputations." "Oga," Musa interrupted.
his weathered face creasing into a smile. We're a driver, a gatesman, and a maid. We don't have reputations to lose. You do. And maybe that's exactly what you need to lose to find what actually matters. As the four of them stood there, the morning sun rising over Lagos, each of them understood that the real test wasn't over. It was just beginning. Because tomorrow, the world would know the truth, and Chukwuemeka Obi would have to decide, would he fight the story, suppress it with money and lawyers, and prove he'd learned nothing? Or would he do something radical, own it, accept it, and let the consequences fall where they may? "What are you going to do, sir?" Ngozi asked softly. Chukwuemeka looked at his mother's watch, the one Ngozi had saved, and remembered the woman who believed he could be better than his circumstances, better than his fears, better than the man he'd become. "I'm going to do what my mother would have done," he said finally. "I'm going to tell the truth, all of it, and I'm going to face whatever comes next with the people who actually matter standing beside me." He looked at each of them, Ngozi, Musa, Ifeanyi, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly, but something deeper, something real. Purpose. "Tomorrow is going to be chaos," he warned them. "The media will be brutal. Your lives will never be private again. If you want to leave now before it hits, I'll understand. I'll pay you everything I promised and more. But if you stay..." "We stay," they said in unison without hesitation. And in that moment, Chukwuemeka understood what his mother had been trying to teach him. Wealth isn't what you accumulate, it's what you give away. Power isn't who you control, it's who stands with you when control slips away. And family isn't who shares your blood, it's who stays when the bleeding starts. But none of them knew what was coming. None of them understood that the journalist on that roof had captured more than just a conversation. They'd captured something that would either destroy Chukwuemeka Obi forever or transform him into something Lagos had never seen. A billionaire who chose people over profit. A rich man who chose truth over reputation. A master who chose to serve those who'd served him. And the decision he would make, the choice that would define not just his future, but the future of everyone who'd believed in him, would either be the greatest redemption story Nigeria had ever witnessed, or the most spectacular fall from grace in business history.
The headlines screamed across every newspaper stand in Lagos. Billionaire's cruel game. Chukwuemeka Obi faked bankruptcy to test staff. Exclusive photos and audio inside. By 6 a.m., the story had gone viral. By 7 a.m., protesters were gathering outside the mansion gates. By 8 a.m., Chukwuemeka's phone had 247 missed calls from panicked investors, furious board members, and gleeful competitors smelling blood in the water. But at 8:15 a.m., as Lagos held its breath waiting for the billionaire's response, Chukwuemeka Obi did something nobody expected. He opened his gate, walked through the crowd of journalists and angry citizens, and stood on the hood of his car, not as a king addressing subjects, but as a man ready to face judgment. And what he said next would either destroy him completely or redefine what it means to be powerful in Nigeria. "My name is Chukwuemeka Obi," he began, his voice steady but raw. "And everything you read in that article is true." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed like lightning. Journalists shouted questions over each other. But Chukwuemeka raised his hand, and something in his face, something broken and honest, made them quiet down. "I faked my bankruptcy. I tested my staff. I played with people's lives like they were characters in a movie I was watching for entertainment." He paused, his voice cracking. "And I was wrong. Completely, inexcusably, devastatingly wrong." A woman in the crowd shouted, "You think saying sorry makes it okay? You're just like every other rich man, heartless." "You're right," Chukwuemeka said, looking directly at her. "I was heartless, but 3 people taught me what it means to have a heart again." He gestured behind him, where Ngozi, Musa, and Ifeanyi stood by the gate, visible to everyone. These three people could have destroyed me. They had every reason to. Instead, they chose something harder than revenge. They chose to believe I could change. 12 hours earlier, at 8 p.m. the previous night, Chukwuemeka had gathered his lawyer, his publicist, and his crisis management team in his study. "We can suppress this," his lawyer had said immediately. "The journalist who took those photos and recordings did so illegally, trespassing on private property. We sue for invasion of privacy, get an injunction, and bury the story before it goes wide." "We spin it," his publicist added. "Say you were doing research on a documentary on economic disparity. Make yourself the hero trying to understand the common man. I can have talking points ready in an hour." Or, his crisis manager said, "We go scorched earth, discredit the journalist, dig up dirt on the publication, make them look like the villains. By next week, everyone will have forgotten the original story." The three professionals looked at him expectantly, their expensive suits and confident faces representing everything his money could buy: protection, spin, power. Then Chukwuemeka thought about his mother's letter, about Ngozi selling her blood, about Musa deleting 5 years of leverage, about Ifeanyi choosing poverty over betrayal. "No," he said quietly. "No?" His lawyer looked confused. "Sir, if we don't act quickly—" "I said no. We're not suppressing anything. We're not spinning anything. We're not destroying anyone." He stood up, and for the first time in weeks, he felt the weight of his mother's watch on his wrist, like a compass pointing true. "Tomorrow morning, I'm going to tell the truth. All of it. And whatever happens after that, happens." His crisis team had quit on the spot. "You're committing professional suicide," they'd said as they packed their briefcases. "By tomorrow night, you'll be finished in this town." "Maybe," Chukwuemeka had replied, "but at least I'll be finished as myself, not as another version of a lie." Now, standing on that car hood with all of Lagos watching, Chukwuemeka continued his confession. "For 7 years, a woman named Ngozi Okonkwo worked as my maid. I never asked about her dreams, never asked about her son. Yes, he's her son, not her brother, and she was 13 when she had him after being assaulted. Never asked about the hospital debt she was paying off, or the family she was supporting, or the promise she made to my dying mother." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Behind him, Ngozi wiped her eyes, but stood tall, no longer hiding. "My mother sent her to save me from becoming the kind of man who measures humans by their usefulness, and for 7 years, I proved my mother's fears were justified. I became exactly that man." He pulled out his phone and held it up. "For 5 years, my driver, Musa Audu, collected evidence against me. Recordings, documents, photos. He could have sold it for millions. His grandson was dying of leukemia, and I refused to help him because I was too busy playing my fake bankruptcy game. But instead of destroying me, he deleted everything. He chose mercy." Musa stepped forward, his weathered face visible to the cameras, and nodded once, a simple acknowledgement of truth. "And Ifeanyi Okafar, my gate man," Chukwuemeka's voice broke. "A business rival offered him 5 million naira for information about me. His wife needs a surgery that costs exactly that much. He turned it down, chose loyalty over his wife's life. What kind of monster creates a world where people have to make choices like that?" The crowd had gone silent now, hanging on every word. "I'm standing here today not to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm standing here to tell every rich person in Lagos, in Nigeria, in Africa, we are the problem. Not poverty, not corruption, not the system. Us. We who have everything and share nothing. We who test loyalty instead of earning it. We who play with people's lives and call it business." He jumped down from the car and walked directly into the crowd. Security tried to stop him, but he waved them off. "I want to show you something," he said, pulling out a folder. "These are documents I signed this morning. Legal, binding, irreversible." He opened it for the cameras. 51% of Obi Technologies, my company, worth 1.2 billion naira, is now owned by an employee trust. Every person who works for me, from the janitor to the CFO, now owns part of the company. Equal shares, equal voices, equal profit. The crowd erupted in shock and disbelief. Ngozi Okonkwo is now head of the Adeora Obi Foundation, named after my mother, with a 200 million naira endowment. Its mission? To help young girls who've been assaulted, who have children too young, who think they're worthless because of trauma. Ngozi will run it. I'll fund it, but I won't control it. Ngozi's knees buckled. Ifanyi caught her as she wept. Musa Audu and Ifanyi Okafor are now board members of Obi Technologies. Not symbolic positions, real power, real votes, real voices in every decision I make. Because I've learned that the people who understand suffering make better decisions about wealth than people who've never known hunger. A young journalist pushed forward. Mr. Obi, this sounds good, but how do we know it's not just another game, another test? How do we trust you? You don't, Chukwuemeka said simply. You watch. You hold me accountable. You call me out when I fail, and I will fail, because I'm human and broken and learning. But the difference is, now I have people around me who won't let me forget who I was and who I'm trying to become. An older woman in the crowd spoke up, her voice shaking. My son works as a messenger in your company. He's worked there for 8 years. You've never learned his name. The accusation hung in the air like an indictment. You're right, Chukwuemeka said. What's his name? Tunde Adebayo. Chukwuemeka pulled out his phone and made a call right there in front of everyone. Mr. Adeyemi, it's Chukwuemeka. I need you to pull Tunde Adebayo's file. Yes, the messenger. I want to know everything. His family situation, his aspirations, his struggles. No, I'm serious. Do it now and send it to my phone. He hung up and looked at the woman. By this afternoon, I'll know your son's story. And by tomorrow, if he has dreams we can help with, education, business, whatever, we'll help. Not as charity, as investment, because I'm learning that the best returns don't show up on balance sheets. But then came the voice that changed everything. A voice from the back of the crowd, amplified by a megaphone, dripping with contempt. Lies! All of it is lies! The crowd parted to reveal Chief Adeyemi himself, Chukwuemeka's business rival, accompanied by a team of lawyers and what looked like his own journalists. This is a publicity stunt. Chukwuemeka Obi is not a changed man. He's a desperate man. His company is actually failing. Real bankruptcy, not fake. He's giving away shares because the shares are worthless. He's creating foundations because he needs tax breaks. This whole confession is just another manipulation. Murmurs of doubt rippled through the crowd. Cameras swung between Chukwuemeka and Chief Adeyemi like spectators at a tennis match. Is that true? A journalist demanded. Is your company actually failing? Chukwuemeka could have denied it, could have produced financial statements showing his company's health, could have destroyed Chief Adeyemi's accusations with evidence. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone. He laughed. Not a bitter laugh, but a genuine, liberating laugh. Chief Adeyemi, do you remember what you told me 2 months ago? You said, when I lost everything, everyone left except my driver. You learned that lesson through real bankruptcy. I learned it through fake bankruptcy. But we both learned the same truth, didn't we? That wealth without humanity is just expensive loneliness. He walked toward the old man, and the crowd held its breath. You're right that my company is struggling. Not bankrupt, but struggling. The fake bankruptcy scared off some investors. Real consequences for fake actions. Poetic, isn't it? He stopped directly in front of Chief Adeyemi. But here's what you're missing. I don't care anymore. Not the way I used to. If Obi Technologies survives, wonderful. If it doesn't, I'll build something else. Something better. Something built on truth instead of fear. Foolish boy, Chief Adeyemi spat. You're throwing away everything your mother would have wanted for you. No, sir, Ngozi's voice rang out, clear and strong, as she stepped forward. You didn't know Mama Adeora, but I did, and I have something to show you. She pulled out her phone and projected on a nearby wall using a portable projector Chukwuemeka's tech team had set up. On the screen appeared a video, old, grainy, but unmistakably real. It was Chukwuemeka's mother, clearly recorded shortly before her death, sitting in her hospital bed. "My son, if you are watching this, it means you have met Ngozi. It means my plan worked. I am sending her to you not as a servant, but as a mirror. She will show you what you were, desperate, poor, invisible, so you never forget what you became, powerful, wealthy, visible. But more importantly, she will show you what you could be, a man who uses power to lift others, not push them down." The crowd was utterly silent now, mesmerized. "I'm dying, my son, and my greatest fear is not death, but that you will die emotionally long before your body stops breathing, that you will become so rich you forget what it means to be human. So I'm sending you 3 gifts: Ngozi to remind you of compassion, struggles to teach you empathy, and a choice, every single day, to be the man I raised or the man the world wants you to be." Tears streamed down Chukwuemeka's face. "Choose wisely, my son, because at the end of your life, nobody will remember how much money you made. They'll remember how many lives you touched, how much love you gave, how much light you brought to dark places. Be that light, please, for me, for yourself, for everyone who will never know they needed you until you show up." The video ended, and the silence that followed was the kind that changes things. Chief Adiemi's face had crumpled. "Your mother, she was always too good for this world." "Yes, she was," Chukwuemeka whispered. "And I've spent 7 years proving I wasn't worthy of her. But that ends today." He turned to the crowd, his voice carrying across the morning air. "I can't undo the past. I can't give Ngozi back the 7 years she spent being invisible. I can't give Musa back the time his grandson spent suffering. I can't give Ifeanyi back his peace of mind while his wife deteriorated. But I can do something else. I can make sure that every employee in every company I influence never has to choose between loyalty and survival. Never has to suffer silently while their boss counts money. Never has to be invisible." He pulled out another document. "This is the Adaora Obi Accord, named after my mother. I'm asking every CEO in Lagos to sign it. It's a commitment to 1. Know every employee's name and story. 2. Create emergency funds for employee medical crises. 3. Share profits equitably. 4. Measure success not just by revenue, but by employee well-being. 5. Commit to transparency and accountability." "You're asking billionaires to give away their power," a journalist said skeptically. "No, I'm asking billionaires to understand what power actually means. It's not controlling people, it's empowering them. It's not hoarding wealth, it's circulating it. It's not being feared, it's being worth following." "Mr. Obi," a young woman's voice called out, "I'm a student at University of Lagos. My mother is a cleaner at your company. She talks about you the way people talk about wicked kings and folk tales. Why should we believe you've changed? Why should anyone trust this isn't just another rich man's empty promise?" Chukwuemeka nodded slowly. "What's your mother's name?" "Comfort Okonkwo." He called his office right there. "Pull Comfort Okonkwo's file." "Yes, the cleaner. I want to know if she has children in university." "Okay. How much is the tuition?" "I see. Do this. Pay her tuition in full for the next 3 years. From my personal account, not company funds. No, not a loan. A gift. Because her daughter just taught me something important. That the people cleaning our floors are raising the people who will change our world. And we should honor that." He looked at the young woman. "Will that answer your question?" She stood there, speechless, tears running down her face. "But understand," Chukwuemeka continued, his voice harder now, "I'm not doing this to buy your trust. I'm doing it because it's right. Your trust is something I have to earn every single day through consistent action. Words are cheap. I've spent 42 years speaking empty words. Now I'm going to let my actions speak, and you, all of you, can judge me by what I do, not what I say." Then came the moment nobody anticipated. Chief Adeyemi stepped forward, and everyone tensed, expecting another attack. Instead, the old man said, "I'll sign your accord." Chukwuemeka stared. "What?" "I said, I'll sign it." Chief Adeyemi's voice was thick with emotion. "Your mother, she came to me once, years ago, when I was broken and bitter. She brought me food, sat with me, told me the same thing she apparently told you, that wealth without humanity is just expensive loneliness. I didn't listen. I rebuilt my empire on the same principles that had destroyed me the first time: fear, control, ruthlessness." He looked at Ngozi, Musa, and Ifeani. "But seeing these three people stand by you when you had nothing to offer them, that's not manipulation. That's real. And if an old fool like me can learn, maybe there's hope for this city yet." He extended his hand. "I'm sorry I tried to destroy you. I was afraid that if you succeeded at being different, it would expose how much of a failure I've been at being human." Chukwuemeka took his hand, and the crowd erupted in applause. The sun set over Lagos, painting Victoria Island in shades of gold and crimson. On the rooftop of Obi Technologies, a party was in full swing, but not the kind of party Chukwuemeka used to throw. This party had Musa's grandson Ibrahim, now in remission, teaching other children how to play chess. It had Ifeadi's wife recovered from surgery, laughing with employees who now knew her name. It had Chidi's mother, Ngozi, preparing to start university, surrounded by the first cohort of young mothers the Adaora Obi Foundation had helped. And it had Chukwuemeka, no longer standing apart from his people, but sitting among them, listening to Comfort Okonkwo tell him about her daughter's first semester of university. "She's studying social work," Comfort said, her face glowing with pride. "She says she wants to help people the way you helped us." "No," Chukwuemeka corrected gently. "The way her mother helped me, by teaching me I wasn't helping anyone. That's the real gift." Ngozi joined them, holding a glass of Chapman. Mr. Chairman, the foundation just received our 100th application. 100 young mothers who need help, who need to know they're not worthless because of what happened to them. Can we help them all? With the funding you've provided? Yes, all of them." Chukwuemeka smiled, and it was the first genuine smile many of them had ever seen from him. "My mother would be proud." "She is proud," Ngozi said. "I can feel it." As the party continued, Musa pulled Chukwuemeka aside. "Oga, I need to tell you something. That contact I deleted, Chief Adeyemi's offer for information, I kept one recording, just one, from that first day you hired me when you told your lawyer, 'I like honest people.' I kept it as a reminder that once, before the tests and the games, you believed in honesty. I want you to have it now." He played the recording. Chukwuemeka's younger voice, full of hope and idealism. "I like honest people. I want to build a company where honesty is rewarded, not punished, where people are valued for who they are, not what they can do for me." "I failed that version of myself," Chukwuemeka whispered. "No," Musa corrected. "You just took a long, painful detour to become him again. But you made it back. That's what matters."
Later that night, after the party ended, Chukwuemeka stood alone on the rooftop, looking out at Lagos, this impossible city full of dreamers and survivors, angels and demons, truth and lies. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "I was the journalist who exposed you. I expected to destroy you. Instead, I watched you destroy yourself and rebuild into something better. That takes more courage than most people have. Lagos Insider." He smiled and replied, "Thank you for forcing me to choose truth over comfort. Sometimes the greatest gift is someone removing the option to keep lying." As he put his phone away, Ngozi appeared beside him. "Can't sleep?" she asked.
Just thinking about my mother, about how she saved me through you. She saved both of us, sir. I was a broken girl who wanted to die. She gave me a reason to live. Then she gave me you to save, which gave me a purpose beyond survival. We saved each other, Chukwuemeka said. That's what I'm learning, that salvation isn't a one-way street. It's not the rich saving the poor or the powerful helping the powerless. It's humans saving humans. All of us broken, all of us trying, all of us needing each other. That's beautiful, sir. You should put that in your next speech. He laughed. You know what? I will. Because pretending to be perfect is exhausting. Being honestly imperfect is liberating. They stood there in comfortable silence. This former master and former maid, now friends, now family, now partners in the difficult work of building a better world, one honest action at a time. Ngozi, can I ask you something? Of course, sir. That night you sold your blood. You really didn't have to. You knew I'd paid the debt. So why did you do it? She was quiet for a long moment. Because, sir, I needed to know if I was staying for you or for what you could give me. If I could give everything, even my blood, when there was no benefit, no reward, no audience watching, then I'd know it was real, that I wasn't just repaying a debt, I was choosing love. And what did you learn? That love isn't transactional, it's transformational. It changes the giver and the receiver. You tested us to see if you loved us, but I tested myself to see if I loved you. We were both running experiments, sir. Mine just had higher stakes. Chukwuemeka felt tears on his face again, but these were different from the tears of shame and regret he'd cried before. These were tears of gratitude and wonder. Thank you, he whispered, for staying, for choosing, for loving me enough to let me fail and learn. Thank you for being worth the wait, sir. As Lagos settled into its chaotic nighttime rhythm below them, this city where billionaires and beggars shared the same traffic, the same heat, the same impossible dreams, Chukwuemeka understood his mother's final lesson. Wealth is what you have when everyone wants something from you, but richness, true richness, is what you feel when people want nothing from you and choose to stay anyway. He'd been wealthy for 20 years, but he was only now learning what it meant to be rich. And the difference, he realized, was everything. If you made it to the end of this story and your heart isn't full right now, check your pulse. Listen, I need something from you, and unlike Chukwuemeka's test, I'm asking honestly. 1. Smash that like button if this story moved you, challenged you, or made you think differently about wealth, loyalty, and what really matters in life. Subscribe and turn on notification bell. If you thought this story had twists, you haven't seen anything yet. But here's the real question I need you to answer. If you had Chukwuemeka's wealth right now, would you A. Test everyone to see who's real, B. Trust blindly and risk being used, or C. Something completely different? Comment A, B, or C. Some angels come disguised as servants. Don't let pride blind you to grace.